Who are you?
Whoever you want me to be.
Don't say I never gave you anything.
It's feeling epic.
3 words. 8 letters.
I remember everything.
Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Previously on Teen TV. I'm Jillian Banani.
And I'm Claire Wojciechowski.
And we have a special episode today. We are talking all about love triangles.
Yes, we are talking about why we love them, who some of the top love triangles are, what makes a triangle so juicy.
This is definitely one of my favorite tropes that are used in teen shows. I think it takes a show to another level, I will say. And to me, in my teen shows, I need there to be some form of love triangle aspect in it.
I think it definitely elevates it. I mean, it's a classic trope, and it gets viewers invested.
Yeah.
You tune in week after week because you want to see if there's developments with one person or the other. You know, you want it's something to grab onto in a teen show.
And I like choosing a side. I like being on a team with it. That's a big thing in the fandoms lately is you gotta pick a side and you gotta stay on that side.
Yeah, I will say it is. I mean, there's some negatives to that, but I think it's a really lovely way to bring these fan communities together is this shared love of one character over the other for this central person in the love triangle.
I just think it makes it like a little bit more fun too. Yeah, I think that there is like kind of like a fandom aspect to it. That just, it makes it a little it's just for fun. It's like something for the fans, Yeah.
I think anytime you give a couple like a combined name too, that makes that makes it a little bit more inclusive to the fan community.
What's your favorite like couple name?
Oh my gosh,
there are some bad ones.
There are some bad ones. I think I will go with the name just on name alone.
Just name alone.
Team Jellyfish. I think it's clever. That's fun.
No, that is a good name. I think you're right. I think it's like, that's a really good last name to be Fisher's a good last name to be able to put in into a couple name.
Yes.
So they played that right. I think it's fun. I like to say Team Jellyfisher.
Oh, interesting. That makes a little more sense, but I don't know. I shorten it because jellyfish is already a word.
Yes.
In case you didn't know.
What?
Oh, wow.
No, that is a fun one. I will say that there really wasn't a team with this, but my favorite is Naylee. And I just want to say out the bat that I was, in the forums, I was nominated to be vice president of the Naylee community,
right,
which was an honor that I, to this day, look back fondly on.
Can you clarify, just for those who may not know, and if you're listening, I don't know why you wouldn't know, but who you're talking about?
Sorry about that. So I'm talking about One Tree Hill, Nathan and Haley. They're my all-time favorite couple. So, again, it wasn't a team really because there wasn't anyone else in there, but just Team Naylee just in general.
Team Naylee against the world.
Yes, that was me. And again, other people thought that I was a great candidate for vice president until they had to take down that part of the forums for reasons that we don't need to get into.
Okay, we'll move right along.
But yeah, let's move right along. So today we are going to list our favorite love triangles in teen shows.
Yes.
And by favorite, what we mean is like what we think, the ones that brought the drama, the ones that it was a really strong love triangle where you could really see both sides. So they had to be, both, contenders of the love triangle needed to be strong contenders.
Right.
Like, it needs to not be somebody who, like, barely has scenes with the person.
Right. Or someone who they bring in as, like, an obvious attempt to stir up drama, but, like, as a fan, as a viewer, you're like, there's no way they're going to, throw a wrench into this existing relationship. Like those attempted weak love triangles, we're not talking about those today.
No, not, only the strong love triangles we're talking about.
Indeed.
So I'm excited to break this down.
Yeah. Why do you think that like we and fans in general are so interested in love triangles? I know we talked about the team aspect, but is there like another element to it?
I think it's so fascinating because I think that when I'm watching the show, it's like I'm on a certain team because I'm like, this is the only way that this should turn out. Like, this is how it's meant to be. But somebody else watching it is viewing it differently. So I think that it's a tool that's kind of used to show that people are like, seeing the show differently and like looking into things a little bit differently. And it's a device to show that there's like so many different opinions.
Yeah. And I also think like if you're watching and you're putting yourself in that situation, you have two people who bring out different sides of you, who are different types of people. And there's an appeal to both that, you could choose this path or path A or path B. And each one has its own value and its own merits, and you're going to have a different type of life, and neither are bad. It's just which one do you want? So I think that that's really interesting. I also love the idea of like putting myself in that center position and being like, these two different people are interested in me, and it's flattering. In theory, if you're, because I do that route when I'm watching, I'm trying to put myself in the character's shoes, and it's like, I mean, who wouldn't want two handsome or beautiful people to fight over them?
I'm always the main character.
Yes.
And I also think too, love triangles really aren't that big like in real life.
Right.
So it's just something fun for a TV show.
Yeah.
Because in real life, you rarely have two people really fighting over you. But I mean, at least, for me, that's never happened, unfortunately. But, maybe one day. Maybe I'll find myself in a love triangle with brothers. We don't know. Time will tell. But that's why I think it's so fun for TV because, it brings out a lot about like what life is about and that you can choose like different paths and decisions have, a different decision can lead you on a completely different path. But there's also just an element of it that's like not super realistic to real life.
Yeah, it's a fun fantasy.
Exactly. We love a fun fantasy. Okay, so let's break it down.
All right.
Our top love triangle. So the first one is, and this is a big one, Elena, Damon, and Stefan from the Vampire Diaries.
Yes.
I think this is one of the ultimate love triangles that we've ever seen on TV.
Absolutely. I think that the fact that they are brothers adds a certain element to it. I think it's always more dramatic when it's two siblings fighting over the same person. And they are very, very different and offer Elena different paths in life.
Yeah.
Damon, I think, as a Damon fan, it's like that speech that he gives her that we see in flashback at the end of season 3 when he's like, you want a life of adventure. You want a life that excites you and challenges you. And he sort of, I think, is projecting what he wants onto her, but in the end, he's right. She wants that, and that's what she chooses in Damon. The more difficult path, perhaps, but the more exciting one.
So are you Team Damon?
For Elena, I am Team Damon, yes. But I like Stefan too. I could see the appeal of him.
I would say I'm, after I watched the whole series, I rewatched recently, I thought I was Team Damon. I'm Team Stefan now. I flipped.
That's fair.
I just think that, I think I like Stefan as a character more. So then it's like, if I like him more as a character, I then would want him to be with Elena more. Mm-hmm. I feel like everyone's like, oh, Damon's like the bad brother, the bad boy. And I'm like, Stefan has done way worse stuff. Like, it turns out Stefan is like the bad one, is kind of what we came to like realize in the series. So, love a bad boy. I'm going Stefan.
All right. Fair enough.
And I just think Paul Wesley is really hot. I'm more attracted to him.
That is a valid reason for choosing one person over another. Obviously, physical attraction is so much a part of the love triangle debate.
It's that hair. You know,
his hero hair.
Sometimes it's just the hair, and that's what you got to go with. So that's why I'm Team Stefan, Paul Wesley's hair.
Well, let's talk about some different hairstyles in another love triangle with brothers. Of course, we are talking about Conrad, Jeremiah, and Belly on The Summer I Turned Pretty. Now, Jillian, you and I have talked about how we are both Team Conrad girlies here.
We are. We've talked a lot on this podcast about how much we love Conrad. If you follow us on social media, you've probably seen a lot of Conrad videos.
Yes.
We love that sad boy Conrad.
We do.
We love Connie Baby.
We love Connie Baby and his floppy hair.
You know, we wish one of us was Team Jeremiah, but it just didn't go that way.
Right.
But since, you know, I've gotten a lot of friends to start watching The Summer I Turned Pretty through this podcast, which has been fun. And several of them have texted me that they are Team Jeremiah, which kind of shocked me because I thought Team Jeremiah girlies were all like younger. You know, maybe girls who are more like still a teen or maybe like young 20s is what I was picturing. But my brother texted me.
Your older brother?
My older brother, who is about 34, 2 kids, and is watching The Summer I Turned Pretty. And he said he's Team Jeremiah Jellyfish. And I was like, excuse me. And he said that Jer is a sweetie pie and that makes more sense with their ages and that they're going to the same college. And I thought that is very literal. And I understand that. Like, I do think that makes a little bit more sense, but, you know, I don't go the literal route here.
No.
I go the fantasy. I want her to be with her childhood crush. That's what I want.
Yes.
And also, our producer, Jessie, is Team Jeremiah, and we need to hear from her on this.
Okay, here's my argument.
Yeah, please explain it to us.
They're going to attack me. Stay in your seats.
I'm feeling all riled up now.
Clearly. No, look, I understand the merits of Conrad. I think Conrad is hot. He's brooding. He's moody, whatever, everything that you want in a teen heartthrob. But Jeremiah has never hurt her. He has never treated her badly in the way that Conrad has. I know that's boring, but when you're thinking about like the right partner for her, you know, I think the argument for him is that he's only been good to her. He's only treated her well,
except when he was trying to blow her up with
that
firework.
I knew you were going to bring up the fireworks. I mean, because he loved her.
Listen, I mean, they both have their pluses and minuses. They're pros and cons.
I also just think that the way that they positioned the show was to get you to root for Conrad a little bit, because they could have definitely repositioned things to where, because you said her teen crush, like her lifetime crush. We've seen lots of other shows where it's like the storyline is the guy you never noticed and then suddenly you looked at him differently and that was the one. Like they teetered on it a little bit, but I think it was just the way that the show was positioned that they haven't given Jeremiah a fair shot at like you seeing the real story of him and Belly. And I think sounds like we might get some more of that next season, but I just think he hasn't gotten his fair shot yet.
Yeah, I do think the show is positioned in that way of, you know, really more showcasing Conrad and Belly's relationship and why he more is the one for her. We're not seeing too much of like Jeremiah and Belly, and you know, I'm down to see more of it. I'm not like against it, but
sell me on this relationship.
Yeah, I need to be sold a little bit more.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. We have one of my favorite love triangles, and I think one that's, you know, people are really passionate about is the love triangle of Brooke, Lucas, and Peyton on One Tree Hill.
Yes.
So this one is a little bit of a doozy, and I feel like really does not hold up and is kind of sad. But I also do think it's like kind of realistic of like that this would happen.
I think especially on One Tree Hill, it does not every love triangle has to be two people like explicitly fighting over someone. Sometimes it's more about like just sort of what the central person choosing between the two. And in One Tree Hill, we do get into territory occasionally where they are not friends because of their both wanting Lucas. And it's a bummer because they are best friends and so close at the beginning of the show, and they come back around and it all works out, but it's just not as exciting and not as fun to watch. I
think it's really sad to watch them, like, this friendship deteriorate over a boy. And, it's great. I'm glad that they did, like, come back together and all of that. But, yeah, I just think that, like, this one doesn't hold up as much for me just because, Brooke and Peyton really only had each other, too. They didn't really have, like, families at home and parents who cared about them. And they were each other's family. Yeah. And then this, like, guy comes in and kind of mess with both of them. And it's just like really sad to see what happened to their friendship.
Yeah, and not the greatest guy either, as it turns out. He's a fuckboy, and he's a pretentious little man. But in the interest of the love triangle debate, who would you choose for Lucas? Who are you rooting for?
So I'm Team Brooke, Team Brucus here, because I think that in my relationships, I like to see more opposites attract. I think that it's just more interesting storylines. And I do think that Brooke brought out something in Lucas, like a more fun, silly side that really needed to come out instead of everything being like so serious all the time. So I think that they were cute together. And, I thought they had good chemistry.
I agree. And the chemistry thing, as we know, certainly stems a little bit from the fact that those two actors dated and were married in real life. And that certainly played into the love triangle back and forth of it all. But I will say that I ended up being Team Peyton. Yeah. I saw the appeal of Brooke and Lucas as I was watching the show. I did see the fun side. And at the beginning, I was very much like, oh, Peyton is sad. Like, go with Brooke. But I think in the later years, as they move into adulthood, they sort of come to understand each other better. And I think that there's a lot of appeal to someone who sort of gets you on a deeper level, sort of instinctually. Like, they have a lot of shared pain in a way. Yeah. Which is,
I just found that kind of dark. Like, maybe these two people with this shared pain, like, need to find somebody else and, like, still be friends. But, yeah.
I think maybe just sometimes I'm rooting for like the two moody, brooding people to find each other and find happiness in that way.
Yeah, which is fair. Yeah, I think I'm more the like find somebody happy. Yeah. But no, you know why I think I'm not a super big fan of Lucas and Peyton? It's because how the show did it. I thought they did that couple and relationship so dirty. Like, they needed like more moments in season 4 together. Like, it just felt like all of a sudden then they got together and there was like this big switch of like all of a sudden then Lucas realizes he loves Peyton. Like, we needed more like moments with them and like talking maybe about their feelings or like, there was like, they had a couple of scenes, but I just feel like their relationship got bogged down with other storylines in season 4. And they did it dirty. And because I did like Lucas and Peyton together in like really early season 1. And I just feel like they did not recapture that season 1 magic of them when they actually had them get together.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
All right. So next up is a little bit more of a recent love triangle. It's with Devi, Paxton, and Ben from Never Have I Ever.
Yes.
Which I watched and I thought they did a really good job with this love triangle. I think it's a good example of like a little bit more of like a recent one. There's not really like trauma involved in this love triangle, which I thought was like a little bit refreshing. But and I feel like they showed it in a way too where like the boys weren't like physically like fighting over her, which is nice, but then I'm also like kind of miss that a little bit, like fight for her, dudes, come on. But this was a classic love triangle of like the popular cool guy, hot, takes his shirt off a lot versus the one, the nerdy one, like do-good guy who she definitely has a lot more in common with.
Okay.
So in the end, she ends up being with Ben, which it's one of those things where I think it's like realistic and like ultimately better for the character, but God, you just love Paxton Hall Yoshida. I mean, those abs. Again, sometimes it's like you just want, them to be with the hot one.
I haven't seen the show.
Yeah.
So I can't really contribute, but I have seen memes of his abs, and they're quite nice. So congrats to that man. And sorry to her for not choosing them.
Yeah. I mean, I think it made sense she chose Ben in the end. But they were really trying to force Ben on us, I think, as like a love interest and all that. And I think that there's a version of the show where her and Ben just could have been like good friends. And, she date Paxton, because I thought that, again, I like too when there's a little bit more of like an opposites thing, and like she was just such a good influence like on him, and like he kind of like opened her eyes up to, somebody new, and so I felt like, I think that could have been really interesting to explore a little bit more, but the ending made sense, blah blah blah. Yeah. It was fine.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm saying is I'm Team Paxton.
Yeah. Let's move it on over to a love triangle with a fourth party added, but we'll keep it on the main love triangle and talk about Rory, Jess, and Dean on Gilmore Girls.
A classic.
I know. The debate continues to this day. It continued in the reboot, even though it was kind of answered. I personally am of the mind that Dean sucks. He
lay it out
is
there.
Controlling and boring, and just like, I guess he's like a fine starter boyfriend when you're like 15, 16 and you just want to date like the cute floppy haired boy.
Yeah.
But like he is like not on Rory's level at all.
Yeah.
And really does shows time and time again that he does not understand her and can't keep up with her. And she doesn't handle the end of that relationship the best, but ultimately I think Jess, for all his issues, is the better match for her. And so of the two of them, I am Team Jess, although in my heart of hearts, I'm Team Logan. What about you?
I am Team Jess. Actually, those are some of my most favorite episodes of Gilmore Girls, is when Jess like starts to come into the mix. I think that it's so great because they have a lot in common, but they're also opposites. So you kind of get like best of both worlds, where it's like they, bond on an intellectual level. They both love to read, but Jess is also like a bit of a bad boy, and like Rory's not. So I think that like in that instance, it's really fun because you get to see like both of that. So it's not just like, oh, she's going with the bad boy and they have nothing in common. It's like, no, they actually have like a lot in common.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like super interesting, and I wish that Jess could have stuck around longer.
I know.
I mean, Milo, like we needed you on that show for longer.
I know, but would they have lasted when she goes off to college? She goes off to Yale, and he's a high school dropout, excuse me.
He makes it work. He wrote a book.
He does. A short novel.
I mean,
I know.
Rory ended up dropping out, so
I don't disagree.
You
Listen,
dropped out of Yale?
Why did you drop out of Yale? I know you. I know you better than anyone. That monologue is imprinted into my brain.
It is so good.
Yes.
I think maybe it wouldn't have worked out in like the beginning of Yale.
Sure.
But I think maybe like as she got a little bit older, like they really could have made it work.
I agree with that. I think, they both go their separate ways at that time. And then as adults, they could have come back together and found a way forward.
Yeah. And Dean can just go right away.
He can kick rocks.
Yeah. Get out of here, Dean. We don't want to see you and your floppy hair working at the grocery store. No. Okay, so next up we have another classic WB love triangle. And that's the one between Joey, Dawson, and Pacey from Dawson's Creek.
I mean, I feel like pretty much the whole world feels that she made the right choice in the end in choosing Pacey.
Yeah.
And this is another one where Dawson was sort of her first love. They are, as they say, beyond best friends, beyond soulmates. They have this sort of like magical connection and they're so tied to each other's lives, but in a way that like maybe doesn't make them great partners in real life.
Exactly. I feel like too with Dawson's Creek, like it was just kind of weird how like they're like 15 and everyone's like they're soulmates, like they're meant to be together. It's like, can we let them like explore a little bit? Like let's like tone it down on the soulmates talk a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, but I agree. I think that there is something really beautiful though of that Dawson, you know, might be her soulmate, but not necessarily like her, you know, lover. And I like that they kind of explored that and didn't just, you know, kind of take the easy way out of having them be romantically, you know, together for the rest of their lives. Like, and again, I just think, you know, Pacey, those episodes are so much fun. Like when Joey and Pacey are, you know, having scenes together and they have such great banter. And then the episodes where we see that he's in love with her, like those are such good episodes.
Yes.
And I think that it's super fun watching him fall in love with her.
Yeah.
And we didn't see that with Dawson because it's like they're already like, you know, have this like strong connection.
Yeah.
So I think that that's why Pacey worked really well because we were able to actually like see them fall in love. And we need that in a teen show. We need to be able to see it. We can't just, you know, get on the screen and it's like, oh, we're in love, we're soulmates. Like I need to like see the like development of that more.
Yeah, and I think it's also hard when we come into a show and we know from the beginning pretty much that Joey's in love with Dawson and that he's oblivious.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he like wakes up and is like, oh my God, it's my best friend who's been next to me all along.
Right.
And like that's a little frustrating. And also like, do you really want her to choose him then? To be like, you ignored me for the new pretty blonde girl for months and now you all of a sudden you're into me. And then she like offers herself to him and he rejects her because he's trying to be nice, blah, blah. Anyway.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that you see Pacey and Joey not only fall in love, but they become real friends. Like they've always been sort of friends through Dawson, but they're antagonistic to each other in season 1 and most of season 2. And finally, season 3 is them really getting to know each other on a deeper level, relying on each other, showing up for each other. And that turns into this romantic relationship. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing to watch progress.
Yeah. And I agree with what you said about that. It does just always feel like Dawson just wakes up and is like, oh, I'm in love with Joey today. And it's like, I mean, even when he saw, you know, that something was going on between Joey and Pacey, then all of a sudden he decided that he wants Joey.
Right.
After like ignoring her for a majority of like that season.
Yes.
So I think I was just getting a little annoyed about it's supposed to be me and Joey. It's like you only want her when somebody else does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Team Pacey all the way. I will say I posed that question on our Instagram recently and someone commented, at least we can all agree that we're not Team Dawson.
True.
And I feel like that is just so true.
And I think James Vanderbeek agrees as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Dawson was kind of insufferable.
I know, he really does talk about like that he found Dawson so annoying. Which,
he was not a great character. But you know what? He gave us an incredible meme. For the end of time, and we are grateful.
Thank you, James Vanderbeek.
Yes. All right, now we are going to go way back to maybe the original teen drama love triangle, at least the first one that I was aware of, and that is Dylan, Brenda, and Kelly on Beverly Hills 90210. Now, I sort of jumped into the show while Dylan and Kelly were sort of messing around behind Brenda's back while she was in France. And even though I was like, that's not right, I was rooting for them. I was like, I don't know why, but I felt like they had a little bit of a connection. And I know that it was bad because they were sort of cheating, but Brenda was cheating too.
So I have some thoughts on this.
All right.
So I came into 90210 because for Christmas one year when I was in high school, I think I was like 16 maybe, I got season 1 of 90210 on DVD. Loved it, like completely binged it. I was like, this is so good. And I loved Dylan and Brenda together. I was like addicted to them. I thought they were so cute. I love them. And then I actually stopped watching the show when Brenda left to go to Paris, because I looked online what happened next, because like I couldn't find the next season on DVD, like wasn't out yet, and I was like, I need to know what happens. So I looked it up and I was like, Dylan gets with Kelly?
Yes.
Like, how dare they? That is so rude. So I was like, I just can't continue with this. I don't know how I'll move on from Dylan and Brenda. I love them so much. They were so cute together.
Well, did you know what happens at the end of all the triangles? Are you aware of how the series ends and how everybody ends up?
I'm not. Give me a refresher.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Brenda goes off to Paris for the summer at the end of their junior year. Dylan and Kelly start hooking up. Brenda is hooking up with an American boy in Paris.
Okay.
They come back. She and Dylan are back together for a while. And then eventually, I believe Dylan and Kelly tell Brenda, like, listen, we've been hooking up behind your back. They break up. She eviscerates the two of them and is like, how dare you? My best friend and my boyfriend, whatever.
As she should.
She's pissed. Dylan and Kelly stay together, but even when they're together, they're not happy. They're fighting. There's tension. He's always kind of attracted to Brenda. Mm-hmm. They end up breaking up freshman year of college. It looks like he and Brenda might get back together. And then at the end of the freshman year of college, Brenda leaves for London and never comes back.
Right. I knew she left the show.
Yes, she leaves the show. Throughout those following years, Dylan and Kelly on and off. And then eventually she starts dating Brandon.
Right, I like them together.
Yes, and that is a second love triangle, is the Dylan, Brandon, Kelly love triangle, which becomes more drawn out. It's a little more adult, although they're still only kind of in college. And that's when at the end of season 5, Dylan offers Kelly like a trip around the world, and Brandon proposes to her, and they're like, choose. And she has these two concrete offers, and that's when she walks up to both of them and she's like, I can't accept, I choose me.
Ugh, no. I hate that. Don't choose yourself. I need you to make a decision.
She chooses herself and then comes back in season 6 with a coke addict boyfriend.
Oh, well, yeah. Maybe she should have chose one of the others then.
Yes.
Yikes.
And then at the end of season 10, the series finale, it's hinted that Kelly and Dylan are going to finally get back together.
Oh, no. I wanted her to be with Brandon.
No, she gets back together with Dylan. And then in the reboot, it's revealed that they had a child but are broken up.
Okay, this was a lot to take in.
I'm just updating you.
Thank
cut
you.
a lot of that.
Thank you for the update.
I know. Your
did
5-minute history
that.
lesson that you didn't ask for.
No, I appreciate that. I'm now up to date on 90210. But yeah, I mean, I think that when I'm watching these shows more as a teenager, I like struggle to switch teams. Unless the show does it in a really good way. Like I think Vampire Diaries like did it in a really good way. But I think like when I was younger, I really struggled more to like switch sides, because I was like, I am on this team and I am sticking with it.
Yeah,
like,
you're a loyal person.
Yeah, so
I get that. And I think a lot of my choices and reasons for choosing whoever I choose is because that's when I started the show. Like I started the show with Dylan and Kelly already together, and so that's where I was leaning.
Yeah. You know, maybe one day I will watch and see Dylan and Kelly together, and I'll probably like it, but we'll see. You know, I gotta stay strong with my Dylan and Brenda.
I appreciate that. We need more people like you.
Thank you, Claire. All right, so last up, this is the last love triangle. There's actually quite a few in this one, though.
Yeah, we had quite a few to choose from in this particular show.
So we're talking Gossip Girl.
Mm-hmm. The
original Gossip Girl. And basically everybody dated everybody. So there is a lot of love triangles on this one. So we have, first up, let's talk Blair, Nate, and Chuck. So this was like the original love triangle in the show. Yeah. That was, early on in the show.
Season 1. And I think what made that one interesting was that it was Blair and Chuck hooking up behind Nate's back, even though Nate didn't really want to be with Blair either, because he was interested in someone else.
Yeah. It was like obvious that he wanted Serena.
Right.
But he's like, how dare you, Chuck? And it's like, you're staring at Serena any second you get.
Exactly.
So.
You cheated on Blair with Serena. And that, yeah. So I don't know. I think that one, we were all at the end rooting for Blair and Chuck, even though the relationship maybe isn't great, it's toxic, whatever. We can get into that another day. But in that particular triangle, I think Blair and Chuck are just so devious that they belong together.
I agree. I was a big fan of Blair and Chuck, and I think a lot of it is like their scenes are just super fun together, and it just doesn't feel like Nate really like gets Blair on that level that Chuck does. I did think this was a really fun love triangle early on in Gossip Girl, and I think Blair and Chuck hooking up in that limo, nobody saw coming.
Blew my mind.
And it was so good. And I liked too that they really went with the chemistry on that one.
Yeah.
You know, I know they did have her get back with Nate like in high school, but it was kind of like blah blah blah, like a very high school thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Blair and Chuck, so fun. Like, just, you know, I'm a fan of it.
All-time couple.
Yeah.
What about, so we touched on this already, but Blair, Serena, and Nate, which was sort of the other half of that love triangle, that's sort of where it started. That was the original sort of secret love triangle.
Serena and Nate hooking up at that wedding, also very hot.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was obvious that, you know, Nate was way more interested in Serena than Blair. And I think a lot of that, though, too, is, you know, Blair and Nate dating, like, starting at such a young age. It's like, you got to grow out of that. You got to move on.
Yeah.
You know, you can't bring those middle school relationships into high school.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
And she, at that time, is, you know, very focused on image, and she's sort of dating him because that's what she thinks she should do, because he's this blonde-haired golden boy who she thinks is like the right choice for her future.
Yeah.
And not because, you know, she genuinely likes him or wants to know him. Yeah.
It's just so fun when she starts to lean into her feelings for Chuck. Those are some really good episodes.
Well, you have to put the two brunette people together and the two blonde people together. That's how the world works, right?
Again, it all goes down to hair.
Yes. I think, and then just, you know, related to that, we did have a bit of a triangle with Serena, Nate, and Dan, because of course Lonely Boy sees her in the pilot episode, and a lot of season 1 is about Serena and Dan and their relationship and getting together. But I will say that, in my opinion, she should not have been with Dan in the end. I think Serena and Nate belonged together, and they were the most compatible, and he understood her in a way that nobody else did.
I was just about to say the same thing. Like, I totally agree. Like, I hated that Serena and Dan ended up together. Like, it didn't make any sense. It came out of, like, nowhere.
Yes.
They had clearly, like, moved on from each other, I felt like. And I just feel like, again, that was, like, their, like, high school relationship. I do think, like, Serena and Nate just made, like, so much more sense. And I think that they made like a good couple, and they did understand each other and really get each other.
Yeah.
And I was sad that they didn't end up together in the end. I would have liked to see that. They really kind of like threw Nate away.
I know. Nate
he deserved better.
He did. Nate didn't really get a very satisfying conclusion.
No.
And Dan gets, you know, he gets like this lovely happy ending of the book and being revealed as Gossip Girl, and gets to marry Serena in the finale after all of the damage that they have inflicted upon one another. Like, with Blair and Chuck, it's damaging, but like it comes from this place of like, that's what they almost get off on.
Yeah.
And with Serena and Dan, it just feels like harmful and negative, and like they're just like those like magnets that are like the same type of magnets and they're opposing. I don't know. That's a bad metaphor, but yeah, Serena and Dan just were not compatible, and I think she and Nate are like, they see each other, they accept each other in a really lovely way that we didn't get enough of.
And again, they look hot together.
They do.
You know, one of the fun and best parts about Gossip Girl is that there were so many love triangles. Everybody's dating everybody. And you can't really do that on every show, because a lot of times people don't have chemistry with each other. But I like that in Gossip Girl, a lot of people had chemistry, and I like that they just went with it and tried out different things.
Yeah.
It was fun. They weren't scared to, like, you know, break couples up and have, you know, someone, you know, date somebody that you wouldn't expect.
Right.
You know, similar to like with Blair and Dan. I mean, that was like so unexpected, but like I kind of loved it too, because it was just like, you really didn't see that coming. And when you have a show out for that many seasons, 22 episodes, you gotta, you know, keep it fresh.
Remember Nate and Vanessa?
Oh, yeah. That was like literally like 2 seconds.
Right? And we were all like, no, this doesn't make sense. But I agree. When you have 22 episodes and you're continuing to make the show as it's airing, because the first half of the show is airing while you're making the second half of the show, I think that you have the ability to try things, to try new pairings, to sort of see, how's this couple do? Do they have chemistry? Do the fans respond to it? And if they don't, then you break them up and they're back together with their original partner by the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, they were definitely able to do a little bit more trial and error when we had so many episodes.
Yes.
Which was kind of fun, but also sometimes didn't really work. But kept things interesting. All right. Well, what would you say? So we listed a bunch of different love triangles. What would you say? Like, do you have a favorite of these love triangles?
Ooh, it's a tough call, but I think for me, my favorite love triangle, because it was so compelling, both sides I really was rooting for at one time or another, was the Damon, Stefan, Elena love triangle. I think that's my personal peak.
I agree. I do think that is a really good one because, Damon and Elena don't get together till like season 4 or something like that. But they're kind of like introduced as like having chemistry and like him getting her on a different level around season 1. Kind of later in season 1. So I think that will they actually get together was it was done so well, and it's hard to nail a love triangle. I think a lot of times it just flops. I don't know what I'm saying.
Or it's lopsided. I agree.
Sometimes the triangle doesn't come complete. Yeah, sometimes it's not a triangle. Sometimes it's a rhombus. Okay, so my favorite love triangle, and I'm going with a newer one. I'm going to go with Belly, Conrad, Jeremiah.
All right, I had a feeling.
I think that this is an ultimate love triangle. I do think it's the whole basis of the show, too. So it's not just kind of a side plot point. It is what the show is about. But the way that there are such strong Team Jeremiah fans and strong Team Conrad fans, I think just makes it so fun. And I think that they've done this love triangle really well. So I'm picking it, even though the show is not over yet and we don't know how it's going to end. But I'm just loving it so much. It's making me tune in every week. It's made me obsessed with this show. I do love a love triangle with brothers.
I was going to say, interesting that we both chose love triangles with brothers.
I think that it just adds another layer and it makes it a little bit more interesting. Again, pretty unrealistic for real life too, so it makes it a little bit more of a fantasy, so a little bit more fun. But I love the history that Belly has with both of these brothers. I think that it just elevates the love triangle a little bit, and we don't get that with all of these shows. So I'm going Summer I Turned Pretty.
I like it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we did it. We've broken down all of our favorite love triangles, which, this was a fun journey.
Yeah, I think it was interesting to dive a little deeper into some of these triangles, really argue about the merits of each type of relationship. And I think we learned a lot today.
We did. And listeners, please tell us if there is a love triangle that we didn't include that you think that you're a fan of, because I'd love to hear about more love triangles. And also tell us if you disagree with us. We want to hear about it. So Team Jer, feel free to come on out.
We know you will.
Yeah, I'll see you in the comments. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to tune in next week.
Yes, don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, to rate and review, and to follow us on social, on TikTok and Instagram at previously on _teen TV.
Thanks for listening.